how it would change our lives.
I wish I'd have known when I first became a carer that you could get such great support from other people that have been in the same situation and can go through it with you.
I would have liked to know much more about encephalitis. When my husband was first diagnosed, we knew very little, and obviously once you know a little bit more about it, you can start to look at strategies and ways of coping a little bit better.
What I wish I had known when I first became a carer was how difficult it was going to be to care for my spouse, which is totally different to caring for a child or even an elderly parent. And also maybe a little bit more information would have been good had I known exactly what I was dealing with.
That whatever I did was good enough. Whatever I was doing was enough.
It definitely brought us closer together. As, you could say cheesily, well, that's impossible, but it has done, because we have to look after each other more.
It's affected everything. The whole of our life has been turned upside down. It's meant that financially, I'm now the person who's in charge of the finances of the family. Just organisation, my husband can't really cope with organising things. Every aspect of life really has been affected by the encephalitis and by me being his carer, but we embrace it and we work with what we've got.
Nobody can see it coming. It's suddenly there. 1 minute encephalitis isn't in your life, the next minute it's there with a bang, and it's adapting, I guess. So adapting to the changes it had on my husband, adapting to the changes in my family.
It's difficult dealing with somebody who has a hidden disability, and that's what encephalitis is, isn't it?
It ended up becoming a really big part of my life because I was the main support for Dad and his wife Sue. During that time, during the pandemic, they became my priority for some months. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't all awful. A lot of that support was just things like going swimming together, going walking together, cooking together. We even did some painting together and playing games together and things like that. But some of it was incredibly difficult. I had to really find my voice and be an advocate for them, which was not something I was very comfortable doing at first. And but it brought me closer to them as well, so it's not all bad.
It's very important. Once Julie was over the worst, I was able to return to reasonable length of work, and so I sort of took care of myself with work. And that meant being away from the house for some hours each day, and driving, so I was alone, and that sort of recharged my battery, something we always talk about, ready to come back into that caring role again.
You can't help somebody if you're not at full capacity yourself. I'm sometimes better at that than other times, but something like the retreat is really helpful to be able to get that time out, to not have the responsibilities that we have at home, so it's been really nice.
I think over the years, initially I took no time at all. I felt I had to do it all the time. As the years have gone on, I've realised that I have to take time for myself. So things like doing yoga during the week, going out for walks, just making sure that I am still being me and I'm not just a carer. Not saying a carer is not important, a carer is a huge important role, but I think if you're not careful, you become a carer and you lose your own personality. So hang on to those few moments, where you can catch up with friends, go out and do something, and don't feel guilty about it.
With being a carer, you can forget your own needs and wants. You perhaps become a little bit invisible as the person you are. So I feel that I do need to take that time out, and I run a little carers group, and I also say to them, look, to function and do the role as a carer, you've got to be able to cope and you need to stand back sometimes and just have that little bit of time to yourselves, whether it's just going out to the shops and meeting a friend to have a coffee, or having the whole day in a spa. You mustn't feel guilty, because you deserve that time, because that time is important to you, so you can continue to be there for your caring role. And I feel that although I worry sometimes about taking that time off, and it's all got to be planned ahead to make sure everything's okay when you're not there, that it's very, very important as a carer to have that time.
Initially, the Encephalitis Society, having been told that's what your wife has by a doctor and you go home and Google it, that's no good to you at all. We eventually plucked up the sort of courage, or at least Julie did, contacted the society. They then knew that I needed help. And so I would say the society's been the greatest resource.
I found the Encephalitis Society really helpful, particularly the carers web call, the Zoom meetings, they've been good. But really it's the friendships we've made throughout the people that we've met at the society that have been our main source of support.
The resources that were most helpful in a way were the charities, so the Epilepsy Action Group and the Encephalitis Society have both been invaluable, both to helping us get a diagnosis, helping us find out what support's available and legal advice, and just having somebody to talk to that understands what we've been through. Like, both the charities, completely invaluable.
The most challenging thing about being a carer is you never know what's going to happen from day to day, because although you're caring for the person that you love, they could be different one day to what they are the others. So for instance, one day they could feel, yeah, they can cope, and then other days they feel they can't. So I think it's very challenging as a day-to-day role. Every day is different. And I think you've just got to take a deep breath, keep calm, and go with the flow, and just accept that what maybe you have planned that day isn't going to happen, but it could happen the next day.
One day things can be smiles and rainbows, the next day it can be depression and you're dealing with difficult situations. So it's different every day. It can be very challenging, and that's when the support group, the society are great, because we can be there for each other and other people understand what you're going through. I think quite often in your day-to-day life, other people don't fully empathise with what's happening. And a lot of us have made good bonds that we know we can pick the phone up to each other and can chat through things when it's been difficult days. So on a day-to-day basis it's challenging. I think on a life-changing front, it's the person themselves becomes different. They're not the person they were before they had encephalitis. And that's tough for us as carers to accept, but it's also tough for the person that's had encephalitis to accept that they're not the person they were before. And I think the only thing we can do is sort of take it and embrace it, accept it, and move forward the best way we can.
It's the 24/7 responsibility of being the one that everything comes down to me to organise and arrange and think about, because my husband doesn't always see the bigger picture of everything, so I need to be thinking for both of us really, and that's quite overwhelming sometimes.
I think the most challenging thing was seeing my dad being confused. Yeah, because for him, during the worst stages, before he had his diagnosis and treatment, he'd get very confused. He'd be having some focal seizures that caused absences, where he'd forget what he was doing before he had them. And so at times he'd get very confused, and it was just hard to see him go through that. And he'd forget some very significant things that had happened in his life, and it was very hard having to explain those things to him. I think that was probably the hardest thing, but also seeing how emotionally affected my my stepmum was, and then wanting to be able to help more, feeling a little bit helpless at times.
If I was to give any advice to anybody who was just starting in their journey of caring for somebody who's had encephalitis, our main way of getting through it is to keep a sense of humour and to still try and embrace the things that my husband is able to do, but also to reach out for as much support as you need, and to definitely try and find some people that have been through it before that you get on with and you can help each other along the way.
It's going to get easier. You're absolutely scared when you start. You don't know what is going to happen. And also you don't know the person you're caring for, how they're going to change. So initially it's hard and you're learning, and every day you're learning. Then I might say it does get easier, but don't sit back because it's going to hit you in the back tomorrow.
To not try and pour from an empty cup, because you're not going to do yourself any favours, you're going to compromise your health and well-being, and you're not necessarily going to be able to be as effective as you'd like. So look after yourself.